Welcome to another edition of Market Impact Insights, your podcast source for business leadership perspectives to help your business grow. Hear from experts in marketing, sales, business strategy, and more, with practical advice for business success. Make sure you won't miss the latest episodes by visiting marketimpactnow.com. Now, here's your host, Dan Albaum.
Welcome back to another great episode of Market Impact Insights. If you think about your life, and let's even talk about our work life, some of the most stressful situations are when we experience change, when we face a lot of uncertainty, unknowns, things that affect us very personally. Now, that might be a restructure in the organization that is going to affect our role and maybe even our employment status in that organization. It may be some conflict that you're having with the manager, or it's a toxic environment. You might be even having to go through a performance improvement plan, those PIPs. It may be that you're negotiating a new opportunity. If you're leaving your current organization, negotiating a new job offer, it may be some conflict, some issues around compensation, pay disputes. All of that is just incredible stress. And when we face those stressful situations, it's also true that it can be very challenging to be confident in advocating for yourself, to be able to get the best outcomes. Well, we're going to talk about some successful strategies to get those best outcomes in those workplace stressful situations of change with Dan Goodman. Dan is the founder of Dan Goodman Employment Advisory. He founded that in 2023, and he has helped thousands of people during these critical interactions with their employer. He brings decades of experience into this. He has had corporate experience in a number of different functional roles, but he also brings empathy and, along with that, business acumen to really help people successfully get to the outcome that they deserve. And prior to DGEA, he had launched TruCommish, where he was helping top-performing salespeople successfully reclaim hundreds of thousands of dollars from their employers. So he has this successful, quantifiable track record of outcomes. I can't wait to really explore these navigational strategies through the stressful situations. Dan, welcome to Market Impact Insights.
Dan, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
So I've got to ask you, you had this very successful career in corporate life. You did a pivot. What really sparked your passion to really focus on this area of employee advocacy?
It's been such a big problem really from the beginning of time. Employees have nowhere to go. They have no one to help them with. They are left believing what the employer tells them, often to take advantage of them. My wife had been a rock star sales rep in the VAR market for 20 plus years. She made President's Club 18 out of 20 years, and she had to rely on blind faith and trust that she was owed hundreds of thousands of dollars of commissions and was being paid properly. And knowing the leadership team and their questionable ethics and morals, it was really questionable whether they were being paid fully, and they never got transparency or visibility around it. So I literally, on a manual basis, looked at what they expected to be paid, looked at what they were being paid, and identified the variances and would work with them to research it and put together a list to go back and reclaim that money from the employer. And I was really successful at that. I was really excited to do that. And then I saw just a much, much larger issue with employment as a whole, really around every aspect of employment, from the recruiting process all the way through termination. And it's incredible the way it kind of came about. I've always had this passion in me, and I'm very fortunate to find this outlet where I can help so many people as well.
Yeah, and when you reflect back on your journey so far in helping people tackle these issues and challenges, what has been some of the biggest personal learning you've taken from that? And have there been some real surprises for you along the way?
I guess the biggest surprise is that, I thought when employers sort of target and treat employees poorly, that they're sort of targeting the bottom performers. Almost all of my clients are top performers, or they wouldn't be coming to me. And it's shocking that employers are so short-sighted that they're so worried about that current quarter to kind of kick the can down the road and make their bonuses and sort of misrepresent the bottom line results by targeting and terminating top performing salespeople or employees and taking their variable compensation that has been due and earned and taking it to the bottom line and not paying it out. That to me is the most startling thing. That 98% of all the people I work with have never had an employment issue, have been top performers, have left every job on their own. Their head is spinning and they have no idea what's happening to them. And I'm fortunate to be able to provide them some support in during those times.
Yeah, it seems like that's one of the biggest differences in terms of some of the turmoil and the changes that are happening right now and disruption that's happening right now, where so many people that are being laid off, restructured out, pushed out. It's no longer where it's really just bottom 10%, bottom 5%. It's literally, it's almost independent of performance. It's just situation specific. And so these really quality people are getting hit unexpectedly in many cases with this change.
Yeah, I mean, what I refer to it as being thrown into the riff pile. It's not that it's deserved. If there were no sort of nefarious actions going on, you would not have been included in it. Oftentimes, as a new manager that comes in, they may feel threatened by you, by your institutional knowledge, by your tenure, how well viewed and liked you are and respected, and feel insecure as a result. And they didn't hire you. They don't look at you as blindly loyal and someone who will run through a wall for them and will do whatever they say. And they'll often target these folks, even when they're top performers, because of their own inadequacies. They'll attempt to manage them out of the business. They'll target them, they'll undermine them, they'll humiliate them, they'll isolate them, they'll sabotage them, they'll micromanage them, so on and so forth. And eventually these top performers will say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm going to go somewhere else and I'm above this. And then the employer gets exactly what they want. And the folks that don't leave, then eventually, they'll look for opportunities. They'll get put on a PIP that's not just, or they'll be thrown into the riff pile, to use that as an excuse.
So from an employee perspective, what are some of the most common mistakes you see being made out there in dealing with maybe a situation where there's some going through a PIP or there's feeling that you're being pushed out, or maybe you're going through an actual riff of some kind and negotiating exits? Where are we falling short?
I think the biggest issue is that, these top performers, they don't make excuses. They internalize things. They take things at face value. They're real people. They don't even understand this, childish, junior high school behavior where they're sort of being misled and lied to. They're trusting. What they need to do is look at the other factors that are going on. Oftentimes the words don't match the actions. And when you're being managed out, the actions that they're using to manage you out, you can use as evidence to support your narrative, to then flip the switch back onto the employer and make them defend themselves against the actions that they're taking to undermine you and manage you out of the business. So, I say that be prepared, expect the worst, be pleasantly surprised when it doesn't happen. Assume you'll be terminated tomorrow and locked out of your systems. And then you'll come to me and say, I wish I knew, because if I did, I would have done this, this, and that. We'll do all that now and anticipate the worst. And that way, you'll be set up for success, and you can minimize the impact on these things as they happen.
So one part of that I'm hearing is proactively document when you have the ability to document.
Absolutely. Not only document, the employer will purposely avoid putting important things in writing. And it will always be verbal. And now it's a he said, she said. So what I advise people is, go and memorialize the conversation.
Yeah.
Send an email back to whoever it is. Hey, Joe, thank you for the time earlier today, to ensure that we're both on the same page and there's no confusion of next steps or understanding coming out of the meeting. I brought these concerns to you. Your response was the following, and I shared this, and this was our understanding as we left. And it's done sort of in an innocent kind of way. But in reality, you're documenting what's going on, and you can use that as leverage down the road.
Yeah. I mean, confirming that conversation, and it seems like it's a pretty straightforward thing to do, but maybe in the moment.
I tell people, I posted about this too. I tell people that there's sort of 3 buckets of information that I tell people to gather as if they're being terminated tomorrow. The first one is what you would typically find in an employee file. Your employment agreement, your restrictive clauses, your comp plan, your stock plan, your equity grant, your performance reviews, your data boys. If you're in sales, build out your pipeline. The second bucket would be the subjective claims that employers will attempt to use to either manage you out of the business or to justify putting you on a PIP or to terminate you. So, and you want to offset those subjective claims. So, for example, if you're in sales, I'll give you an analogy, and you can apply that to any role. They tell you that you're not strategic, that you don't close deals fast enough, but yet you have the shortest sales cycle on the team. They tell you that you're not working hard enough, that you're a slacker, but yet you have the biggest pipeline on the team. They tell you that you don't get along well with others, you're difficult, but here's 3 emails from clients that say that I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. So subjective claims that you're now offsetting with the facts. And the third bucket is the most important one. It's what I call my buckets of wrongdoing. That's when you basically want to build a case against your manager or your employer for what they're doing to manage you out of the business. Usually it starts off subtly, and then not so much. They may stop asking you about your personal life or weekends. Then maybe they'll escalate and start nitpicking and questioning things that never mattered before. And then they'll escalate it to more things. So they'll start taking away responsibilities, isolating, excluding, undermining, sabotage, whatever. You want to go back in time and look at what they've done and start documenting that and start filling up your buckets of wrongdoing to build a case against your manager. So when the time does come that they take action, you are ready to respond and negotiate.
Yeah. Now you've been in and around corporate life for quite a while, Dan. How have you seen approaches to performance management and employee termination? Have you seen a very noticeable shift at all over the last 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly what's changed. I mean, from my seat right now, these issues seems to be even more prevalent than before. It just seems that employers have been doing these types of actions for so long that they become second nature, and there's not even hesitation to them. And oftentimes they're like surprised when people stand up and say something about it, because so many have just taken it and walked away in silence that the employer expects that to be the case. PIPs. I mean, I can honestly say right now that there is no need for a PIP to ever exist. If there was really good intent with a PIP to retain and improve, then why would you ever do it with the threat of termination? If the manager had been doing their job all along and providing the support and the encouragement and the training, if the employee has continued to fail over a reasonable amount of time, why are we wasting everyone's time with what we know will be a predetermined outcome? Terminate them. Do them a favor. Don't embarrass them. Give them a decent severance package. Give them a heads up and let them know, let them look for a job while they still have one for a period of time. And if they haven't gotten one, then give them the package. That's how we should play things. It's just such a waste of time for everyone. And it's so disrespectful. And that's what PIPs are today. And I can say that just about every instance. Who actually thinks that an employee is going to perform better when the threat of termination is lingering over their head? That's not supportive. That's threatening. And I don't know who performs better in that environment.
Yeah. I mean, and I've talked to a lot of people as well that have been in and around those PIP situations. And it just doesn't seem like there's real evidence that, oh, here's how we were able to actually improve someone's standing in the company, that they successfully navigate. It always seems to end poorly from the employee perspective. It seems a predetermined outcome is in and around the PIPs.
Let me share some signals that people should sort of look for, right? Do you deserve the PIP? Have there been any formal complaints previously communicated? Is there other folks who have performed, equally or worse than you have that are not on the PIP? Have you been given a reasonable amount of time to improve on the PIP? I would say that 90%, 95% of all folks that I speak to on PIPs are given 30 days. And some they're already 10 days into the 30 days before they're even told about it. It's so clear what the outcome is. They're now being asked to achieve something that the top performer has never been able to achieve in 3 times the amount of time given to do so. And this is what people are suffering in. And there's just such a lack of honesty and transparency and trickery. And they're left to sit there and wonder, is this real? Is this legitimate? Am I being managed out? Should I go look for a job? Should I try to work the PIP? And that's one of the things that I help people do, is to really assess the situation, the landscape, to look at it from sort of the top down, to be able to see the forest through the trees. And sometimes they're so deep in it that they can't see what's right in front of them.
So Dan, if we're in one of these situations, it can be really polarizing. It can be intimidating, and probably you can feel very alone, kind of out on an island, and you're facing this adversity. Should we be more conscious of reaching out and making sure that the people that do support us, our family, close colleagues that we've worked with before, should we be relying more? Should we be intentional about getting that kind of emotional support to help navigate through this?
It's a really great point you're making there. I mean, one of the reasons why so many people come to me is that they don't feel that they have anyone that they can talk to, that they can't talk to people at work. Oftentimes they're the ones doing this. Their spouse doesn't really understand what's going on because maybe they're in a completely different field or an industry or role. And they feel stuck and alone. Oftentimes when people have been targeted for a long time, people don't really even believe what they're actually going through. I mean, I've heard this many, many times that people's family and friends have abandoned them and told them to give up this fight, that they're harming themselves by doing it. And they feel so isolated and alone. I mean, I worked with someone who was a Me Too victim, and she worked with 2 different law firms over a 6-month period, got nowhere, came to us for help. We worked with her for what was almost 12 months. And she went from $0 to $125,000 payout. And the most important thing to her is that she was able to reclaim her life, that everyone abandoned her. Everyone said she was foolish. She's hurting herself. And she became obsessed with it. And we were there for her the entire time, supporting her. It was one of my most proudest cases that I've worked on.
Yeah. And a big question in these situations is, how should we be thinking about the relationship and communication with human resources departments? That's a big one, isn't it?
That is a huge red flag. I have a very, very strong opinion about this. And while it certainly doesn't happen 100% of the time, it happens enough that people need to be thinking about this and looking at it that way and planning accordingly. HR is not for you. They are there solely for leadership, to protect the company. Even worse about HR, though, is that they're a double agent. They trick you. They make you think that they're there to help the employee, that they're there to eliminate friction. When you go to HR with a complaint, you've just created friction, and the easiest way to eliminate the friction is to get rid of you, especially if it's around a senior leader who has authority over you. So I always say, don't be played by HR, play them. And the way you're played by HR is that you believe that they're there to help you. And they encourage you to open up and to be vulnerable and to share your thoughts and feelings. And before you even get back to your desk, they're already on the phone with your manager, sharing everything that they led you to believe would be confidential. They have no obligation to keep anything you say confidential, including private health information. So don't share it if you don't want to. I say play HR. So when the writing is on the wall, when the termination is pending, when you're 2/3 of the way through the PIP and it's clear you're going to be terminated, go to HR, file a formal complaint against your manager about what's happened. Have them, pause what's happened and do an investigation into it. Document everything that's gone on. So now HR is not hearing about it for the first time after you've been terminated. And now you've gone and shared these concerns, and now they may even retaliate against you and terminate you shortly thereafter, providing more evidence for you to add into your case, sort of the straw on the camel's back approach.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, is to just be very careful and cautious in terms of what, to who, and when you're sharing very personal information.
So what is your desired outcome, and what is your goal, and what is the worst case scenario that can happen by you initiating this action, and can you live with it?
In going through situations like this, and especially if they're protracted, maybe it's not just weeks, it can be, I'm sure, months of just stress and tension. And one of the worries that I would have just thinking about other human beings is, what kind of long-term scars, are there permanent scars that someone takes with them, even if they get out of it, navigate through it? And so, but I think you're in this unique place, Dan, where the people that you've helped, you've probably seen downstream them find a place that they deserve to be, where they're working with great people and it's a better situation. So has that been gratifying for you to see people at least come through this, get what they deserve, but then also find a better place to actually work and contribute?
I say this all the time, probably a half a dozen times a day. It feels really bad right now what's happened to you. But I can tell you, 80% of my clients seem to end up in a much better place than they were, and they would not have been in that place if what happened to them didn't happen. They'd still be stuck in that bad place. So you got to believe, you got to be positive. These scars are real. I'll tell you a story. When I first started this business, it was about helping people stand up and get what was due to them. It's sort of an extension of TruCommish and getting your commissions back. But what I quickly learned that this business was about so much more than that. That these folks have been traumatized for months and months, in some instances years, and they start to question themselves, and they're in such a bad place. And our system, our process, helps them to stand up to it and to be heard. And it's extremely therapeutic. And I can honestly say that is more valuable in a majority of instances than the compensation that they're getting from working with us. It allows them to leave it behind them, to not carry years or decades of regret. One of the first calls I had probably 2.5 years ago, some guy was on LinkedIn. He said, "Hey, I'd love to have a call." I was doing calls all the time at that point. And he's telling me his story. And he is so passionate. You can hear the pain in his voice. And I'm like, when did this happen? Was this like a couple of months ago? I was thinking, maybe we could do something with him. He told me it was 13 years ago. And it sounded like it was from last week. And that is the trauma that people are carrying around every day from being mistreated by their employer and just taking it and walking away in silence and doing nothing.
You mentioned LinkedIn, and I know you're very visible and very active, Dan, out on LinkedIn. And I guess a proof point to just how big this issue is just the volume of the inquiries that you get, right? Your inbox is flooded every day.
Oh, it's incredible. So I have a type form that I created and I published out there. It was published now. I think it was probably 26 months ago. We just crossed 10,000 people that have filled out that background form. I have, DMs every day. I'm getting across DMs and 3 email boxes and text messages. I'm getting close to 80 to 100 reach outs on a daily basis. It's mind-boggling. I'm having close to 15 to 20 people fill out that type form every single day. The issues are so prevalent. No one is safe. It doesn't matter where you live, your geography, your age, your gender, your role, your seniority, your tenure. It doesn't matter. Every single person could impact, and I've seen it happen. Whether it's a CEO, the C-suite, all the way down to an entry-level role in SDR.
And you're hearing from people around the world too.
Yeah, I just had my 15th country at 5 a.m. Last week from somebody from Singapore who was now signed up with us.
So we've been talking a lot about some of these toxic work environments and some of the, I guess, bad actors or things that you might be facing. But let's shift over because you also have this unique perspective of maybe it could be the follow-up where people land, or it could be maybe some good people that emerge even in their current company of good leaders. And so I'd like to get your perspective on what do you think separates exceptional leadership from just good enough?
Selflessness and selfishness. Leaders that put their employees ahead of themselves, leaders who get extreme satisfaction from investing in their people and seeing them grow and develop. There are people that are literally wired like that get greater gratification than closing a $10 million deal. And what's really shocking is that so many of these incredible individual contributors are being pushed into these promotions of managerial positions that end up being 50% pay cuts, that have no training to be a manager, who are not wired to be selfless, and it's just setting everyone up to fail. That to me is one of the biggest issues. I mean, the biggest thing too is being transparent and being honest and just putting yourself in your employees' shoes and doing right by people. It just seems that the motivations in capitalism and investors and the bottom line and share price and all that it seems to just dominate doing the right thing in humanity, and there needs to be some balance.
Yeah, you hit on something there where, people leadership, the skills to be able to be highly effective and to really grow people into achieving all that they can achieve. And I mean, that is not something that necessarily just automatically happens or is a next step in terms of individual contributor success. And so I think what you're saying is, people maybe feel the pressure to, well, I've got to take this next promotion because what would it look like if I don't do that? But some people actually, I know, have made a conscious choice not to go into people leadership because they know that their sweet spot maybe is more as an individual contributor. So It's just being very intentional and kind of going in with your eyes open in terms of what's the responsibility that comes with people leadership.
And it's a really great point, but I've also heard something you just said that I want to pick up on. I've talked to at least a half a dozen people that were retaliated and eventually terminated for not wanting to step into that leadership position. That they're now sort of we're no longer viewed in the same way. We're no longer on the same track. We're no longer given the same opportunities. So something you need to evaluate from all angles.
Yeah, it can backfire, it sounds like, as well, which is really a shame. So, Dan, you're giving advice and guidance to so many people and helping them, but I want to flip it around and ask you, what's the best piece of business advice you have ever received?
At the time, I thought the guy was crazy, and I almost laughed about it. But now that I look back, it's really what's kind of defined my approach. I mean, it's you know what? It's to not chase money, but to achieve happiness, to be balanced. Everyone has their own definition of success, each person, and society tells us like what the right thing to do is, or how we should act, or how we should do. You got to do it for yourself. You got to be true to yourself. Some people, when you're younger, you want to, make as much money as you can. You're so short-term focused about your career. You don't want to sort of invest the seeds to then sprout down the road. I know I had that view when I was younger. I remember I had a marketing professor in my MBA program that, really had this exact conversation with me. And at first I thought it was a little crazy, and then it resonated. And then it's the older I get, the longer I go through life in these processes, it shines bright, and it makes all the sense in the world. You see these people that are just miserable in life. They're alone. They've got all the money in the world. They dedicate all their time to work, and they've got nothing. True success is having a balanced life, happiness, and one that you can look back on and know that you impacted people and people remember you by it.
God, there's nothing better than that, than helping others. And then it's really living life that's centered around a very clear purpose.
I got to tell you, I love that word purpose, man. It just resonates so much with me. I just never felt that I had a purpose. And I just said to myself, even 3 years ago, if I drop dead tomorrow, who have I impacted? What have I done? What legacy am I leaving? And I didn't like the answer. And it's incredible. I mean, I started posting on LinkedIn every day, and it has just transformed my life. And I know without a doubt that I have incredible purpose. I've had an amazing impact, and I couldn't be more proud of what's happened in the last 3 years.
And, I was just thinking this idea of finding your purpose or being clear about it, that maybe if there was one positive that could come out of people that are having to unfortunately go through these toxic situations of being pushed out, is maybe that has been a forcing function where they're being very self-reflective through that process. And it's almost reaffirming, maybe they're doubling down on their values, but there can be some good in terms of what they carry forward out of that, in terms of that self-reflection. Have you seen some examples of that?
I mean, in terms of the clients that I work with, I don't know, not so much. I mean, to tell you the truth, I'm not getting folks that are coming to me that are poor performers, that have, misstepped. I mean, people are typically being targeted. I mean, there are some folks that have, made some mistakes, and, we kind of talk them through, but the very, very large majority of the people I work with are people who have been significantly wronged. They're top performers. They naturally do what you're suggesting. And I tell them not to, honestly. People have a natural tendency that when they're targeted, when they're under attack, that they defend themselves. And when you defend yourself against it, you're validating it. That now becomes the conversation. They wonder, like, how could this happen? What have I done wrong? And yeah. It's not them. And I think I've had this conversation 6 times a day, honestly, that it's the natural human reaction to question what you did to bring yourself to the situation. And I help them see the bigger picture, that it's not about them, that they shouldn't question themselves. They shouldn't let this sap their confidence. And they should look at it through the realistic lens, not the one that the employer is trying to put on them.
Yeah. When you think about the future, Dan, what makes you optimistic?
Well, I mean, honestly, at this very moment in time, it's kind of difficult to be optimistic, with so much going on around the world and how divided we are right now. But I will say that, the younger generation does give me hope. When I was raised back in the day, life was about win-lose, And it just seems that that is changing in a lot of eyes, that it's more about everyone together, win-win, and I'm seeing some hope in sort of some of the new and younger leaders that are emerging, where they're not having I was hazed, so now it's my turn to do the hazing. And it's more about being human and doing the right thing and wanting to stand up and do the right thing. And I'm seeing people that are that are being terminated and targeted for doing just that. But as those younger generation are evolving into more senior leadership positions, and have a stronger voice, I'm hoping that we'll see a significant change. But the bottom line is, the only thing that's going to bring change is by bringing awareness to it, by publicizing it, by holding people accountable, and making other people aware so that it doesn't become second nature, and that employers and people in general think twice about doing the wrong thing because there's ramifications for doing so.
Do you have any other final advice for someone that is going to need to navigate through, advocate for themselves in an exit situation?
I mean, I guess, be prepared. Don't believe what they tell you. The entire termination separation process is a farce. They misrepresent it of what reality is. They make you think that they're doing you a favor, that they care, that they have no obligation. The only truthful part is that they have no obligation. They do these things solely so that you'll sign a release of claims, never to be heard from again. It's as if you never worked there. But they present it as the opposite of that. So you can't be brainwashed. You can't blindly trust and believe. Their goal is to reduce separation costs at all costs, and they will say and do anything to do so. I've seen it over and over again. So, don't break free from that subservient employer-employee mentality. And, you are equal to them. You have something they seek, your signature on a release of claims. You need to flip the narrative and even the playing field about what reality really is versus what they push down your throat.
Yeah, and it seems like the other smart thing to do is, if in doubt, it can always be helpful to get an objective perspective, someone that can kind of bring in another lens, into your situation. And so seeking advice and help, it's okay to say, I need help, right?
That's a really good point that you bring up. I think that when I think about it, I think that's a large number of people come to me, and that's really what they need. They just need someone else who's not been deep in it to validate what they're experiencing, so that they don't think that they're going bat poop crazy, so that they, can see the forest through the trees through that someone else can help them see it. So that right there. I mean, it's the same thing with the PIP. I mean, I've probably had 500 PIP consultations. I've never looked at a single PIP, although the clients probably all thought we were going to. Instead, we're reassessing, we're adjusting the lens that they're looking through versus what's being presented to them by the employer.
Well, Dan, thanks again for sharing your perspective, your experience. You're helping thousands of people. Many people every day get to better outcomes through some really challenging situations and exits. And this has been enlightening, and we need to keep shining a light on this. Thanks again.
That's my pleasure. I appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation.
And a reminder, please continue to give the gift of feedback to help make this podcast even better. You can do that by going out and giving a rating and a review. It's so easy to do on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And as always, make sure to visit marketimpactnow.com for the latest in business leadership perspectives. So long until next time.